book Interrupted has been nominated for a People's Choice Podcast Award. We'd like to thank our fans for all your support.
Mind, body, and soul. Information is the goal. Try to learn something new without being distracted.
Really important because it's a book and it's a biography or an autobiography. That's one that you tell yourself, right? Autobiography. And so by virtue of the media through which it's delivered, you know, you can fall into like just engaging with the character, right? But it's his real life and you're like, this is fucking real. Like, and
that's the thing. You're like, oh.
And you root for this main character, right? As he goes through, and I'm sure there was moments in his life where he just felt shame about his journey or his existence, like his identity. It makes me so mad. Like, it just makes me so mad.
You know what other thing he does that I thought was really great in the book? And it makes me think of how this whole binary of good and bad. All the people in his life within the book, he doesn't paint them bad or good. They are like Kim said, like every person's textured. So when they do something that's not, that you might say is bad, you don't hate them. You're just like, oh, why did you do that? Like you feel like
it's really humanizing.
Yes,
that's
and it
so
makes
much more in line exactly with the human condition. Those are the moments and the people that really impact us. It's not when things are clean and things are very like this way or that way. It's when we have to hold those paradoxes within us. And yeah, even like what we spoke on, I think with like nonviolent communication, to like even view like an abuser is also a human. No. It's way easier. I want to label them a villain. You know, and villains do bad things, and there you go. There's your boxes. Don't come out of them.
It's like the same
That's
thing
real life.
as the race binary.
Yeah.
Right? How we learned that, like, you know, it's not good or bad. Like, there's probably some racism that you got, I want to say by accident, probably fully on purpose.
Yeah.
Like, there's some racism that you got, and it doesn't mean that you're bad. Just like there's some characters in this book who make some choices that hurt him. And it's not because they're bad people. It's because they're people having an experience, and part of their story is that as well. And it goes back to that interconnectedness too, eh? Like, you see someone who you might at the shallowest level describe as a villain because they do something that might hurt the main character, but then you're brought to the web of that person and how did they get there and all of the things that were connected to create that situation. And you're able to gain empathy and understanding, and then you want to advocate for everyone.
Yeah.
I find that well, I've only read the bits that I think his dad is a villain right now, but maybe it gets more humanizing, I'm sure. But I also like in each of the chapters or the little stories, he ends it on a way where you're like, oh, I want to know more, and then he goes on to something kind of different. So you're like, you feel like I think this is such a refreshing book for me since doing this podcast, because we've done a lot of like intense, you know, me, and I'm not huge into the self-help kind of books. And this is nice because you still get to learn, but you're learning through someone else's emotions and views and stories and stuff. And so this to me is more my kind of book than some of the other ones, because I find I learn more when I hear other people's stories than if you just tell me the facts. So yeah, that's why I'm excited. So thanks, Kim, for picking this book, because I'm excited
no problem.
to finish it.
Lindsay, I'm curious. Lindsay, because you are a writer, are you finding it interesting to read his book because it is somewhat new or different from the way we are conditioned as readers to? Like, I found that with Untamed. Mind you, Untamed, of course, came with like the side of a lesson, but I appreciated it because I was like, here's someone who's just trying a new format. Like, sure, they are an author and they're writing, but they're playing around with it. Did you appreciate?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he rewrote I don't know, what's that saying? Reinvented the wheel or something? No, like it's,
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's still just a narrative, a memoir, a story.
Okay.
Like,
Okay.
yeah. So it's not any different, but I am enjoying it. You know, you definitely feel for the characters and feel what it's like to be that, you know, what is he, a 4-year-old boy, and his father is, you know, not left them no food, and they're trying to figure out what to eat, and his brother has to go into the garbage can to find some food for them to eat. Like that kind of stuff, you really feel what it would be like to be that kid. So far, I'm really enjoying his writing style.
I find it interesting in contrast to Untamed, because many of, I guess I'll say us, I didn't point this out originally, but I don't deny it, observed that Untamed was a memoir, but also felt self-helpy, because there was that little chunk of advice, or the lesson was always like summarized at the end, like, and that's how I learned this, and that's how I learned that. And this storyteller is only offering the truth, and it's up to the listener to learn the lesson. And it's a little less presumptuous. And at the risk of stereotyping, I'll go out on this limb and say it's very indigenous, because storytelling is like major. And so I like to see the difference between, you know, a privileged white author telling her story, and then an indigenous person telling his story. And I feel like I can observe all of these, and they're like, again, I don't have the language, like there's nuances, it's like magical, it's intangible, it's the storytelling of the storyteller that draws the reader along, and the learner or the listener to pull from it. It's almost like when you summarize and package up the lesson, you rob the listener or the learner of the experience of capturing the lesson. And so this author's not doing that. He's just using truth. In this case, sometimes the stories are not full truth, but they're still told in ways to help you discover truths or whatever. But he's just telling a story, and it's just so much more meaningful almost than someone who wants to also report on, you know, how many lessons they learned, or I don't know.
Yes.
I don't want to, I'm not going to make Lennon sound terrible.
It's
You
like
know what
the
I'm saying?
difference. Yeah, it's like the difference between explaining to somebody how a strawberry tastes and letting them eat a strawberry, right?
Yeah.
There's a big difference between going through the experience, like figuring it all out yourself, and what it means, right?
That's what I hated about, well, I didn't hate about, but I disliked about Untamed.
Strongly.
That was a but that's what I kept saying. I was like, stop telling me, show me how, you know, show me through your stories, you know, how you got there. And I really think that he's, so far, I've only read the bit, but is really doing that. He's just showing you, you know, his, I don't know, maybe he is telling you the story, but do you know what I'm saying?
Like, he's sharing. He's just sharing an
there we
experience.
go, sharing. Yes,
It makes me think of something I learned in an Indigenous Studies course that said that elders would tell stories to children, and that's how they left it. They didn't tell the children the moral of the story. They let each individual find the moral of the story within the story to take with them on their journey. It's kind of what he's doing, right? He's telling the truth, telling the story, and letting the reader get the moral or the lesson from that by just engaging in the story, rather than being told, and this is what I learned, and this is what you should learn from this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I love that distinction between showing and not telling. It's so in line with even the roots of theater and oral storytelling tradition. When you tell what you want the lesson to be, you rob the audience of the opportunity to reflect. The reflection is key, because the reflection allows you to then find you've been presented with someone's subjective truth. And in order to, once you reflect, you tap into your own meaning making, which are your own truths. And neither are absolute truths, but that's like that's that beautiful magical moment when you disrupt something in your brain and in your heart, when you can find new meaning.
Book interrupted.
My interruption is a broken washing machine. I walked down to the basement and found myself in ankle-deep water. In most of the rooms there was water, except for a few, which I'm very thankful for. So I spent a whole bunch of time mopping and toweling, and with some help of my daughters. I'm so grateful for them. And now that's done, except for I have a broken washing machine, so not the best.
Book interrupted.
What do you guys think about the title? Like, My Story of Being Métis, Homeless and Finding My Way Home, and it's From the Ashes. Like, is it just obvious? Does anyone have anything to say about, you know?
I like From the Ashes, like the idea that, you know, his life was burned down and that he like rises, like kind of like a phoenix or something. That's what I get from it. Something
Me
like
too.
that.
Same. Yeah.
I like the part of finding my way home because of the, I don't know, symbolic journey of his movement. Well, from, I guess, not really understanding his heritage and culture, and then his movement away from his heritage and culture, and then his return, finding his way home, and to be able to come full circle, I guess, and now really embrace and thrive.
There is something I was thinking about that just reminded me, was the word homeless, I think, says a lot more than we think it does, because it's not just that these people don't have a house or a place to live, is that they've lost their home. Like they, you know, home is more than just a building that you're at. And it's a sense of connection to a place or people or, you know, a culture or something like that. And so homeless is, there's more to it than just not having, than not having a place to stay. And I think that's what kind of makes it even more complicated. Some people think, well, just you have to put this building up and the homeless can stay there. And it's like, well, it's more than just not having a building to stay in. There's more to it than that. And so, you know, and some people, I was reading some interviews and about the homeless situation locally, and you know, sometimes cities take down homeless camps and stuff. But the camp isn't just, they're like, well, they can just go in the shelters, but there's a sense of community there, having the same place that you can go to every day and the same people there. And that's part of it. And so, I mean, obviously with his book, him becoming homeless wasn't just not having a building, but the whole loss of his connection with his culture, I guess.
You're right. That is a heavily is that the right term? Heavily laden term, homeless. I never even thought of it. I was like, of course, it's like symbolically, there's like way too many layers in there.
Fixing the problem isn't just a matter of, okay, check, we got some buildings, it's solved.
Yeah.
But that's not it's way more complicated than that. And I'm really looking forward to reading this book.
I think you're right with the sense of community, Mary, because now that I think about it, when you think of homeless shelters, it turns out to be more like it turns out to be a competition, because you need to get to the homeless shelter at a certain time so you get a bed. You know what I mean? So now, instead of a sense of community with other people who are also homeless, like you were saying, in camps, now that they take the camp down and now they're competing for the same bed at a homeless shelter, then all of a sudden there's no longer that sense of community anymore. It's turned it into, instead of community, competition.
I know that a lot of homeless people don't want to go to the shelter because the shelter is just a crammed space of everything that is negative about the homeless experience.
And then all the stuff gets stolen.
Well, that's the thing about the community in there's not this like, I mean, there may be some kind of camaraderie or community, but it's almost like a dog eat dog kind of thing. And like the bylaws not pushing you on, people are stealing your stuff for sure. And like, it could be worse than that too. It depends on what you have of value. You could be threatened. You don't feel safe. And the shelter, to someone who doesn't experience homelessness, looks like a good solution, but hearing from homeless populations, it's good for if it's too cold, right? Like it's good for if that's what I need so I don't die, then I'll go there. But if I can do something else and not die, then I'm going to do that. So like one of the things that bothered me the most that I didn't even realize until it kind of got brought to my awareness is how cities were changing their infrastructure so that you couldn't like sleep on a bench. That's why the benches have a handle in the middle. So like a long bench, I can sit on this side, you can sit on that side. It's divided by a handle because then someone can't lie on it. Like that to me was like, what? Like, oh, they don't have anything. Let's even take away this, you know, like now
why are we
put
putting our
spikes in the-
resources towards making our marginalized populations' lives more difficult rather than taking our energy and resources to helping? And the whole needs thing, like just giving a shelter doesn't fulfill that list of human needs that we talked about in nonviolent communication. Like shelter, like warmth and food and water and stuff is necessary, but that sense of autonomy and community and connection, like that is also so important.
They're picking up on signposts all over the place from their cities saying, we don't want you here. And like Kim, to your point, like even in the Kitchener-Waterloo area, they're making it so that the urban development is pushing a migration. So they're changing the urban development in a way to make it so that they're forcing people that are homeless to move so that they'll all end up in one designated place so that they aren't, upsetting our eyeballs.
That's right. That's what I think that shelters are for, is so that the people who have discomfort at seeing the whatever you want to label a homeless person's experience as can go get in that building, and then I can have a good conscience now.
In Toronto, they've been near my house, not this house, but the house in Toronto. They've actually built recently 2 different buildings, apartment buildings, where it's their own room and like a bathroom, and it's like they're small, but it's for to get people off the streets so they can have their own space and their own home. And there's one just for women and children, and then one for everybody, which is great. But then at the same time, there's a park right near us in which, since the pandemic started, everybody there were a lot of tents, so we had like kind of a tent city in the park, and it was fine. They were kind of out of the way, but everybody was fine with it. But the police I just saw it on the news recently, went and like put up things and like kicked them all out. And so now not only like they all had a community and a home, and they were happy. I don't think they didn't feel shame. They were just like, this is my home now and my community. And they were called the White Squirrel Brigade, I think. But the police just went in and like fully raided it and put up fences and tore everything down, and were really, it was really bad. Anyways, it was a lot of people were really, really upset. There were protests and stuff, but that was just by my house as well. So I'm not saying that Toronto is great, but Toronto is trying to do some things, I think, to help, so that people don't have to go to the shelters and they have their own space and their own
I think more and more there's something being built near my mom's place, and they're converting an old hotel, and it'll be individual homes, like basically a little bachelor apartment. Mm-hmm. And then there'll be a common area as well, and resources in the same place, all at the same place. So I don't know, people
which makes way more sense than like a bunch of cots in a big room in which people don't even have their own space. Like they have to wait each day to be able to get a bed. Like that's stupid. Yeah,
you can have your own space, your own stuff.
If you've enjoyed these video highlights, listen to the full episode on our YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts. Remember to like and subscribe and ring that bell to be notified when new episodes are published. Find out more by going to www.bookinterrupted.com.
Book Interrupted.